And here we are, live to the peoples of the Facebooks. Hello, Dave Storey of AFBTS. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, Michael. I'm really well. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, fine. Where are you these days? Where are you physically?
In Newcastle, just
Oh.
north of Newcastle, a little bit further from you.
And for those who don't know the British geography, remind us roughly where that is.
It's about 50 miles south of the Scottish border, so it's pretty much the furthest, largest town in England that's north before you get Scotland.
Yeah, so you're almost Scottish, but I presume you do not identify yourself as Scottish in any way. I guess you're
No,
definitely
I
English.
was born a bit further north in Northumberland.
Oh, right. Yeah.
My accent comes from Northumberland and from Newcastle area.
Excellent. Yeah, widely seen. I think Geordie accent's widely seen as one of the friendliest ones. I know that they were very obsessed with using Geordies in call centres years ago because seen as extremely friendly. So, so today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, the whole preparing for exit thing, which is much discussed, and there's a lot of buyers out there talking about it. What I think is interesting is that obviously you've been on the selling side of that equation. So, looking forward to talking about this important topic. What do you think is your sort of number one sort of just quick hint before we record the podcast live here? Why do you think this matters? Why do you think this is important?
I think it matters because everyone's goal is the same is to generate wealth, and having a good exit with your business, a successful exit, is a fantastic way to generate wealth.
Yeah,
that's why it matters.
Yep. Good answer. That's pretty straightforward. Right then, well, we're going to get on with recording the podcast. So if you're watching us live on Facebook, don't forget to give us a bit of a like so that you can, obviously, the more you give us some love and some comments, give us a like, love, comment. Do let us know where you're listening from. Be great to know that. I'm always interested in the geography of these things. And do let us know if you've got any questions for Dave. We'll try and sort of get to that at the end as well if we have any questions. We won't do that during the live podcast piece, just to keep it clean, but we'll certainly answer any quick questions at the end. So do pop those in the comments as well. So Dave, with no further ado, let's introduce you and get cracking with the actual podcast itself. Are you ready to roll?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here we go. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7 and 8 figure Amazon sellers. And today we are talking to Dave Storey of Elite FBA Exits. He's a 7-figure Amazon seller. He has sold his own business, and these days he works with Amazon business owners to maximize their exit. In other words, make them more money when they sell their business, or even make the business sellable at all. So Dave, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you back. So we had you on a while ago. So give us a quick recap about your background. Then I'd love to dig into how things are progressing for your students as well.
Yeah, so my background is in the UK. I've lived in the UK all my life, and I worked for several world-class manufacturing companies. Started as a design engineer and worked my way through the ranks and ended up as a operations director. So I was basically in charge of a big factory. And I loved it, and it was always my aim to start my own business. And perhaps I stayed in industry a little bit longer than what I had intended, just because I was enjoying it so much. And then back in 2014, things got a little bit stale related to the oil price drop, and I saw my way out and decided to do a voluntary redundancy, walk straight off the cliff with no business. I just thought, right, I'm going to start my own business. My initial idea was to just design some unique product and put it in the market. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was just going to do it. And I bumped into someone, it was my old boss, who said to me, "Dave, do you want to go into business?" And I said, "Yeah, what? Doing what?" And he said, "Selling on Amazon." I said, "Selling on Amazon?" I said, what do you mean?" And he says, "Here's a password and log in." So I went home that night, logged in, and it was an Amazing Selling Machine 2, I think. Matt Clark was on, and I was just addicted. So we started a business, Amazon business in the automotive category, and things really took off, went great, absolutely fantastic. Of course, it was much easier in those days. We made some good moves, and eventually went on, and I should probably sold that business in 2017 and learned a lot of lessons by making the mistake of leaving it too late, and had to get back on my feet. And did so, and it took quite a while, but in 2019, had a great exit from that first business. And this was just before COVID struck, and had a few months off. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I've learned so much about what it really takes to drive value into an FBA business and to understand the perspective of what a buyer looks into your business compared to what I thought was right. I'm going to do things totally differently this time. I'm going to have the exit plan is going to be in from the start. I said, but that's probably the same with most of the other Amazon sellers, because it's not on any of the training programs, all this stuff. And it's hard to find out there. So cut long story short, I put this program together, Elite FBA Exits, which is all aimed at giving Amazon sellers the understanding that I gained, so they can take that shortcut and drive a proper exit plan into the business and drive a massive amount of extra value in the business. So that got released last year in April, the beta version, and I revised it. I've some great feedback, initial feedback, and some great results. And re-released it in August, September last year. And since then, I've just had a stream of people coming into the program, and I have some absolutely fantastic results. I've spoken to, over 100 Amazon sellers now about exiting. So I've learned a lot of things down the way, and
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So just to sort of recap, you've got that engineering background, and I know you're very, very much about meticulous processes. And I have to say that the best businesses that I know of, or have looked inside, or friends of mine have worked on, if they're doing sort of agency type work, they are meticulous machines. So I think that engineering mindset that you have, and the fact that you're operations director, so you're very operational led, is really, really critical in this space. And as you say, a lot of the training out there, it doesn't really talk about, I think, two things, which we're going to dig into today and correct that a bit, which is, first of all, it's geared for newbies. So they're not really thinking about the 3 to 5 year arc, are they? They're thinking about the next few months. And whilst that makes sense in a one level, on another level, as you say, you start building bad things into your business. And the second thing is really that people aren't geared to thinking in terms of process and structure. They're more about, what do I do next? What do I do next? As opposed to, how do I create processes that are sustainable and sellable, I guess. So that's, it's important to have, that kind of engineering mindset that you bring to the table. And of course, masses of experience and making mistakes and then helping other people not to do that. So talking of that, tell us a little bit about, you've been running your program for, I guess, just over a year then now, the time of recording. Yeah. So how are your clients getting on? Give us some examples of some results they're getting.
Yeah, as I said, I've had some great results. It's a range of results, right from, on the lower end, people that didn't even realize that they could sell the business are now driving a plan forward, got with confidence, and they're going to actually get to the point where they do sell the business where perhaps they never would have before. So then you got people that have, within a few months of joining the program, are putting £100,000 of value extra onto the business than they thought it was worth. And then you've got sort of the upper end of the scale where people have actually sold the business now, and they've put things in place from the program, and they've got, a lot of extra value driven into their business. And that value ranges, it depends from business to business, of course, but it ranges from easily 10%. I see that all the time. So in a million business, you're going to get, 100,000 extra. But some, I've got an example of a client that helped them get an extra 8 figures for his business by simply going and thinking things differently when the time came to sell.
So extra 8 figures, just to be clear, you've made somebody an extra, at least $10 million or £10 million? I
think it was dollars. Yeah.
Dollars. Yeah. Wow. That's a pretty extraordinary result. So you're doing some really serious work. So that's amazing. So we can tell the sort of results you're getting. Let's backtrack then. So first of all, let's talk about the fact that, that you made mistakes. You see other people making mistakes as Amazon business owners. So what's the number one mistake that you think that is out there that we need to make people aware of?
In relation to selling your business, absolutely the number one mistake is, you've already touched on it. It's not having that end game. It's not having the end in mind. So if you start with the end in mind of your selling goal, which is, let's just say for argument's sake, it's 1 million. You're going to do very different things to having a goal of 10 million. Yeah, very different things. So that completely changes your strategy. But if you have absolutely no goal in mind whatsoever, you're just going to wander along, and you may sell your business, you may not, you might get lucky, you might not. So I'd say that is the number one mistake, just wandering into a business and not really having an exit.
Okay, so no plan. And I guess, you know, you use the word exit strategy. So you were saying, so the consequences of lack of exit strategy. So you wander around and I guess maybe do good stuff and maybe not by accident. So what's the end result of that? If we take somebody starting off in you know, say 2017. Oops, he says hitting his microphone, very professional. If we start with somebody starting in 2017 and they look back at 2020 or 2021, what's the end result of this sort of wandering around approach rather than a strategy?
The end result of the wandering around approach is it just depends on, you know, how lucky they were in the wandering, I suppose. That's the way I see it, because it could be that, you know, they do go on to sell the business, but I can pretty much guarantee it won't be worth as much as what it could have been if they had, you know, really thought about it from the start and driven this exit strategy right the way through. Or it could be just that they never ever get to the point, and I've talked to a lot of people like this, that they never get to that point of selling the business because it's just not in their game plan.
So it sounds like really two things that, in a way, I can kind of begin to see why it isn't more present, and we aren't talking about it more, because there's two kind of non-events, right? One is you just don't sell, and I guess that's not a big drama. I guess you keep selling on Amazon, right? But you don't sell the business, or you make less money than when you're going to. Then I guess if you sell a business to an aggregator and you have no idea what you're doing, you don't even know the money you're leaving on the table, right? So it's interesting. There's a big education piece needed, it seems to me.
This is what's happening in the marketplace today, because the aggregators, there's so many of them now, you know, 50 at least, and they're getting really aggressive with their marketing. And, you know, I talk to people that have been hammered by emails from 6-7 aggregators, and generally what's happening to a lot of FBA sellers is that aggregators are taking advantage of their lack of knowledge on what could have been done to drive the value into the business. So they're selling the business, great, but they don't even know that had they picked the low-hanging fruit from the business and not left it to the buyer, who will be happy to do that for them, then they could have made hundreds of thousands of pounds extra on the business value. And that is happening right now. And that's kind of what I'm on a mission to try and change. You know?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think you're really doing a massive service for people by doing that, if I may say so as well. So I know a lot of business owners, I should say, who are considering selling. And there are so many things that I don't have your level of expertise in this particular area, but having interviewed, as you say, there's so many aggregators. I must have interviewed about 7 aggregators in the last couple of months, and then spoken to 4 or 5 business brokers over the last year. That's just on the podcast, never mind private conversations. And there's so much out there that I'm getting educated now, but a lot of people haven't heard the message yet. So let's flip it on its head. If you get it right and you have an exit strategy or an exit plan in place, what's the upside? What happens instead?
Well, the upsides are you're far, far more likely to get to the point where you actually sell your business. This is the opposite. And then when you do come to sell it, it's going to be worth a lot more, 6 to 7 figures, depending on certain factors. Now, the size of the business is one. How early you put the plan in place is the other. The sooner you put a strategy in place to sell your business to your end customer, which is the buyer, the more value that you can drive in. For example, just to get that into your head, is when you're starting a business is the best time to think about the end goal, and that's the time to add the most value. So 2 comparisons. If you start a business with Me Too products, with low margin, struggling against the competition, you're never going to get that value to as high as if you really put the effort in the start and drive some uniqueness in your products with great branding. You know, that's going to really probably about the same amount of work in the end, but you're just going to have a far more valuable business. It could be 2, 3, 4 times the value in the end.
Yeah, it's funny you were saying about how much it's not necessarily that much more work. I was just going through a sort of training. I was just creating a simple sort of free training, which is for people who are new to the space. I mean, sometimes people who are new to private labeling have done a lot of reselling, and they come to me. They're my preferred clients. A lot of people get sold into the idea of like ASM or whatever, selling this the idea that they're going to get rich quickly or replace the day job in 6 months and all that nonsense. But either which way, I was going through it and I was saying, okay, here's what I wouldn't do. Just get an existing product, put your logo, your packaging, and then import it for China. Here's what I would do. tweak the product so it's unique. And I was thinking, actually, it's not that much of a difference in the process. I mean, yeah, there's a bit of extra work for sure, maybe a bit of extra money, but actually it's like another 25% effort, and it changes everything, right? So you're so right. There's actually almost as much work to run a really crap business as it is to run a good one in some ways. Really weird, isn't it? How true that is.
I really believe in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more. So we've used the word exit plan, exit strategy. So what do you actually mean by that? I mean, the word exit even sounds a bit sort of mergers and acquisitions. It doesn't sound like a daily word that we use as Amazon sellers. So what do you mean by that?
I think that we talk about an exit strategy, but the word exit, I think, does drive a bit of a misconception in the fact that, I've got 800 people in one of my Facebook groups, and one of the questions I ask them is, have you started your exit plan yet? And many of them say to me, oh, no, I'm not selling for another 6 months yet. I can do it later. Not selling for another year yet. But I'm thinking, hold on, you should be putting an exit strategy in place as soon as possible, 2-3 years, because that's when you drive the value in. So yes, it's called an exit strategy, but really what it is a strategy to maximize the value of your business, by thinking in terms of what the buyer wants to see in your business, rather than what you want to see.
Oh, it totally makes sense. And actually, I like this. So in a way, then, it's not so much an exit strategy as a sort of, what's the word, asset building strategy. That sounds even more corporate, but somehow building something of value. It's a value building, something like that. So I guess the other way of putting it is that Steve Covey thing from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm always entertained by the fact that I quote Steve Covey, because he was a Mormon and he was an Amazon seller. There's nothing about his life that's the same as mine. And yeah, it's really good, simple principles, one of which is begin with the end in mind, right? Yeah. So I guess what you're saying is start by understanding what you're building, and then reverse engineer from that. And then at the end of it, you can hand it over to somebody, a happy buyer, and you can make a ton more money. So what other things? I mean, by the way, that's been an important conversation in itself. Don't think of exit strategy being for when you're ready to exit. It's maybe like a whole business strategy. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. I mean, selling your business is the greatest thing it'll ever do for you. So why on earth wouldn't you be thinking about it, right from the beginning, as soon as possible?
So let's talk about that as well, because I know there are some people who I literally had somebody say to me the other day, a would-be client who in the end I said, I can't help you. Good luck, goodbye. But the reason why is because I said to him, look, what is it you're trying to build? And he said, I just want to make as much cash as fast as possible. And I said, okay, nothing wrong with that. I totally get your instinct. But, he was not bothered about having a sellable asset at the end of the process. So tell me, what's your response to somebody like that?
So he was just trying to live off the cash flow the business was generating.
Yeah, and then he said, look, if I just have a pile of cash at the end of it, I'll be very happy. And I said, okay, I kind of get what you're saying, but I think you may be missing some opportunities. But I wasn't even going to try and persuade him to think different. People think how they think. But, for those of us who are prepared to think a little bit bigger picture than that, what's your response on that? I mean, is it valid to just kind of buy a bunch of things that are in vogue, for example, face masks now, fidget spinners in 2017, maybe it's hoverboards in 2019, 2020, and just bank the cash and then sit on your pile of cash and that's it, done?
The running a business, and especially an FBA business, which is, as you know, very cash heavy, and even more cash heavy with all these changes and delays in shipping. If you took the cash out of the business, let's just say for your wages, let's just say you took $100,000 or pounds out per year, and then you compare that, so that's $300,000. You compared that to selling the business. Let's just say it was worth $1 million. So the selling the business is always going to make you more money, because of the multiplier. Because if you wound that business up, you're selling face masks and you thought, right, I'm just going to sell off all the stock. You're just going to get all the profit from those masks. But if you sell the business, you're actually selling 3 years ahead. So you're selling the profits for 3 years ahead. So that's a 3 times lump sum in your hand. And then you can then take that money and then go and start another business and probably have money left over to do other things, hopefully in your personal life, like paying your mortgage off, or, going on your dream holidays, or whatever you want to do with that. So I think the best strategy for wealth, which I said at the beginning, is definitely to build your business up and think about the end game, which was selling it, capitalize on the multiplier, and get this lump sum of cash.
Nice. Yeah. By the way, it's not like I agree with this guy, but I thought it was a very interesting. He's not a stupid man. I mean, he's somebody who'd made £2 million previously in another venture, but again, that venture kind of stopped as opposed to being sold, and I think he had quite a lot of cash out of it, but he didn't have a sellable asset, so he was not an inexperienced business person either, which why I thought it was very interesting that it came up. So that's a very great answer. I mean, yeah, the multiplier focus is the key, isn't it? That you can get the profits and then sell the business as a multiple of the profits, which is the key to the massive increase in wealth. Okay, so look, assuming that we understand it's desirable to sell and that we should have an exit strategy, or in fact a strategy for building the business from day one to sell, right? Let's assume that we've bought into all that, which, by the way, some major mental shifts for some people. And just getting to this point, what are the 4 pitfalls that you see the sellers saying into? And I say 4 because I know we've got a little list here. Nice, simple list. Let's start with the first one. What is the first big pitfall that sellers of business owners that want to sell fall into?
Yeah, so we've mentioned this one already, and it's obviously just not having this exit plan. The second one is putting it in place too late, which we have mentioned again. That's a big pitfall, just not doing it all till it's too late and thinking that that's good enough. Third one is having no focus on your end target in terms of a financial target. So if you have a proper financial forecast in place, what you should be able to do then is work out, I want to sell my business for 3 million. At this point now, what I need to do is the gap. So do I need to release 3 products, 10 products? Do I need to go in other marketplaces? Do I need to reduce my costs? Whatever that is to get to that target, it needs to be financially driven. The third one is poor timing. So maybe you sell your business too late when it's gone over that the curve, the life cycle curve, and if that happens, you know, that if you're on the up, which is the best time to sell the business, and you go over the other side, then your multiplier is going to go down massively. And I see this happening to businesses, and maybe it's just market situation or competition flooding in, and they've missed the opportunity to sell. Another one's too early, which I think we've touched on again, just leaving these low-hanging fruit opportunities and just selling too early, and the buyer will take those on for you. And I think that's it. They're the top ones that I see. Michael, you've gone.
I've muted myself. I'm not used to the keyboard shortcuts on StreamYard. Yeah, so you've already mentioned too late, as in the sort of life cycle of the products is past its peak, and that's an important one to say, actually, that it's not all about the later you sell, the more money you make. And as you said, you know, you had personal experience of you know, that, and also that your clients could be falling into that. And then on the other hand, I guess what you're saying is a difference between when you put the exit strategy in place, which is as soon as possible, preferably at the beginning or before you even begin, versus the time of actual sale. So there's a bit of a difference there, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the timing of the exit, as regards the sort of reverse engineering to what we should start doing today, whether you started a business or are about to start one. How do we figure out the best time to sell in the future? Because that's kind of a bit of a how long's a piece of string one, isn't it? Trying to see the future's hard, but how do we get our head around that?
Yeah, so I mentioned that you should sell a business on a period of optimum growth. So the business has been growing year on year, and it's still growing, and it's got growth left in it. This is actually another pitfall. That, you know, you sell the business, and you go to sell the business, you enter negotiations, and then for some reason your business starts to fall off the side. So you have to make sure, in timing wise, that your business is still growing. I recommend for 6 months. Before you start negotiations, so the buyer's not going to uncover anything that would diminish the sale value. And yeah, I guess it's just all about being on that growth curve, and the way to see this comes back to having a proper financial forecast in place, and seeing where you actually are and being able to forecast when is the best time to sell.
Okay, so financial forecasting, obviously part of the how-to piece. We might dig into that in a second, but so the next thing you were talking about, not obviously we got to have a exit strategy,
Yeah.
but what on earth do people actually put on in it? How do people actually work on it? What are the problems there, and what are the solutions to that?
So the key to having a great exit strategy is fully understanding what are the criteria that drives business value. So how is the business valued? The calculations, the easy bit. The in behind that are all the things which make up to driving that value. So there's many things, and it's for some businesses, some things are more important, some businesses less important. So you'll end up with essentially a bespoke plan for each particular business. And if you know what those things are, then you can build those into your exit strategy and work on those things, concentrate on those things to really drive the value through in the years before you come to sell your business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned already low-hanging fruit that on the business that the buyer would capitalize on. Could you give us a few examples of the sort of thing that we as buyers could capitalize on if we realize they're there, but are often missed?
Yeah, so things that are missed, they're missed because people don't have this understanding of what drives the value. So the things I see are perhaps not moving from air freight to sea freight, believe it or not. So that'll be the first thing the buyer does, and that can have a massive effect on the actual the profit in the business. Similarly with supplier costs. So if you have not gone through a real round of sort of professional negotiations with your supplier, that can also have a massive effect. These two things, by the way, can be done right up until the point before you sell your business, because they get rolled back over the trailing 12 months. But if they're not done, obviously that has just a huge effect on the value of your business.
It's very interesting. So you can actually, if you negotiate, say I sell my business in August 2021, and I guess the value is normally a multiplier, say 3 times the typical number for aggregators times your previous 12 months profits, right? So if I renegotiate with my supplier a better deal in July, are you telling me that the whole business value jumps up because of that July negotiation?
Yes. If you've negotiated with your supplier a better price of products, yes, we get rolled back. So
Amazing.
Let's just say you were doing 10,000 sales of a product per year, and you knocked $1 off the price. So that's, well, you got $1 more profit. That'd be 10,000, and then you multiply that by your multiplier, which let's say it's a 4 times multiplier. So that's 40,000 just by speaking to the supplier, which your buyers can do anyway if you haven't done that.
Yeah, amazing. And again, this is it strikes me that quite a lot about the sales piece is or getting a sellable asset is about creating something that is doing the things you should be doing as a good business person anyway, but the payoff is just massively higher. So if you negotiate $1 off and you're thinking about the next 3 months, you might be thinking, well, I've saved myself $5,000, and that falls to the bottom line. But if you're thinking in terms of a 12-month multiplied by a multiple, suddenly the numbers get exponentially larger, right? It's very interesting.
That is a key point. That's in the trailing 12 months. Kind of, if you don't have the understanding of what you should be doing in those trailing 12 months, because it's a different part of the strategy. It's all about consolidation in those trailing 12 months and cost reduction. There's costs, a $10,000 cost that you make on a marketing experiment, which you didn't need to make, costs you $40,000 plus the $10,000 back, so $50,000.
So I guess that the time to do radical experiments is not in the trailing 12 months before selling, then, is what you're saying either. Yeah. And by the way, a lot of us do odd experiments based on sort of shiny object syndrome. I think, for example, you've got a perfectly working product, you're air freighting it, you haven't negotiated, and then you start throwing Facebook ads at it. I see that kind of behavior quite often, right? I guess it comes down to, doesn't mean never use Facebook ads. It just, I guess it means get the basics in place first, right? And also don't do things that are too experimental before you try and sell it. So what are the other things that, we talked about what's missing from the exit strategy? What are the other things that we're missing there? So are we talking about, for example, the financial side or risk management or any of the other things like that?
Yeah. The risk, I guess that's the other one, which is a view on what other things in my business which would make it risky for a future buyer to continue generating the same level of sales and profit. So they could be in the supply chain. They could be perhaps in that you're doing too much in the business and you haven't got any processes in the business, systemization in the business. Perhaps that you've got a product portfolio that has a real strong leader product, like a hero product, and the others are doing hardly any sales at all. Of course, that's a big risk. So when you look at your business through the lens of what are risks to future revenue, that makes a big difference to what you concentrate on for your actual exit strategy.
Okay, and can you give us an example? You've come up with some examples of risks. What are the sorts of things that we would want to put into place to reduce these risks? So we mentioned supply chain, lack of processes, and a product portfolio with one hero product. I particularly see that with, frankly, small businesses that are basically one product and then a bunch of other stuff that doesn't do anything. Yeah. That's quite common with the smaller businesses. So how do we reduce those? Let's take the supply chain one first. We've already talked about renegotiation, but what are the other supply chain risks we need to sort of reduce?
Yeah, a common one I see with the supply chain is that buyers don't have proper contracts or sales agreements in place. Outlining what are the service level agreements with you and your supplier. Because that's not in place, then what happens when the quality issues occur? How are you guaranteeing quality within your supplier? I don't just mean doing the end of the line pre-shipment checks. That's not good enough. You should be guaranteeing quality all the way through the process, making sure that they're doing the job they're supposed to be doing in order to deliver the quality product. And if they have done that, you don't even need a pre-delivery inspection. I'm not saying don't have one, but it's just talking in theory. So a buyer will look at your supply chain and how well you can control your supply chain. And if they see big risks going forwards, that's kind of going to lower your multiplier a bit, because that's seen as risk going forward, but something they'll have to work on themselves.
And by the way, again, this is why I'm so banging the drum all the time for people to go and talk to people like yourself, or at least educate themselves about the business exit. Here's the thing: if you make your business more sellable, another way of putting it, I always say to my clients these days, look, it comes down to, does somebody want to own this business? And if somebody else doesn't want to own it, then if you still own it, and like I know some people might pass businesses onto their grandchildren. I've had three clients in the masterminds, the multi-generational family business, right? But I always say to them, look, I mean, surely it's going to be nicer for you to own or your children to own. They're going to be cursing you if you've got a horrible business. So I think risk is risk, and people get very slack about it when it's your own money at stake, but we shouldn't. Yeah. We really shouldn't. So, it's funny, isn't it?
Just imagine you're looking into a business and you're about to buy it, and you find out that the seller, all their suppliers don't really speak very good English. They're using a third party to communicate to them. They don't have any sales contracts in place. How are they guaranteeing quality? Look at all the problems they've had. How have they solved them? You can be thinking, wow, do I really want to be buying this business? And if I do, it's going to be for a lower multiplier.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, we've got a very unattractive business on our hands, whether you intend to keep it for the rest of your life or sell it. And I think people kind of overlook that because they're just used to living in pain. And I think actually sometimes we learn to live with more pain than we need to as Amazon sellers. So like, actually there are solutions, get on with implementing them. Tell me about the lack of process. You're doing everything in the business and no processes. That seems to me incredibly common with people who are otherwise doing pretty well, good quality products, profitable, good sales, but it's all in their heads. Tell me about how we solve that one.
Business systemization. So processes are absolutely key to delivering repeatable results, quality results in business, something like that. And if you don't have them, then you're open to mistakes. You're going to be bleeding costs left, right, and center, and you're going to have much more problems, and you can be running what I call a chaotic business. So all your simple things that you do in your business need to be documented into processes, whether they be videos, whether they be documents to follow, so that other people can just pick those things up easily, those documents, that process, and just walk through it step by step and follow exactly what needs to be done in that business. Then once you have those things, of course, then you've got the opportunity to give those tasks to other people, and spread the reliance on the business away from you. So you're lowering risk again in the business.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I've heard from some people if you're about to sell your business, that you don't really want to be adding VAs and staff because it reduces the profits and thus, of course, the value of the business. On the other hand, it does mean the business is more dependent on a single person, whoever buys it. So what are your thoughts about that one?
Yeah, so right up, you're talking about just before you sell the business? Wow.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, this is part of the question, I guess, to you, is should we add any costs at all if it's working pretty profitably without people running the businesses? I mean, I understand documentation and process is one thing, but should we be hiring people to do them, or is that actually a bad sign because it reduces profit?
It comes down to how much money, how much cash you've got available in the business, and how busy you are, how complex your business is. If you've got things under wraps and you've got a small business, and you can manage it yourself and it's not very complex, then why take someone on? But if you've reached that level of size of business and you've got cash spare in your business and you really need to be working on these strategic things, which are going to add much more value, then of course you've got to take on VAs, and it's a balance between the cost of the VAs, which should be very much, if you use the right type of VA, to what value that you can personally add to your business by doing more valuable things. So it's a business trade-off decision.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, it's common sense, I guess. I just thought it's something that's come up in relation to the whole business selling piece. Tell me also about this other problem. I'm digging into these a little bit because I think that these are some of the things that it sounds like you've been encountering with your students, and I've certainly encountered them with my clients as well. The other piece was having a product portfolio with a hero product and hardly any sales from anything else. So what are the solutions to that one?
Yeah, well, I've been there with this one. The solution to that one is to obviously you need to focus, turn your focus away from this hero product in terms of putting so much energy and focus into it. So I've been there. I used to have arguments with my business partner that went on hours and hours and hours, and used to draw all our energy into this one hero product. Yes, it was generating all our cash flow, but we realized after a while, hold on, we're not thinking about new products here. We need to be diversifying our product portfolio. So that's when we started releasing other products to support the hero product, in terms of products that would have a high level of profitability and sales, higher than just these other single products that we had at the time, which weren't really doing that great, to be honest. So in my view, the strategy is to bring in products that are either you can do variations perhaps of that product. If you can't do variations, then you're going to need to bring in products along the line of your brand to improve your brand, and focusing again back to what we're saying from the start on products that are going to be unique, products which are going to have some unique features and looks about them. Putting that extra effort in up front instead of just bringing out another Me Too and trying to do the best keyword strategy and best listing is going to produce much better results for you later on.
Excellent. By the way, I must apologize if you can hear me typing away here. I just realized that was coming through. And if you're wanting to get some show notes, folks, just go to 10kcollective.com, which is where we have the blog, and we'll have links to anything you want to check out from today. Yeah, so I like what you're saying about this. Yeah, arguments with the business partner. I guess it's very easy. You can end up with arguments with your consultant or coach or mentor, whatever you call it as well. Trust me from experience about this, that it's very hard to not let go of success, but stop obsessing with it, isn't it? I mean, what's working is obviously important to keep it working. But as you say, you've got to have the courage to add things of genuine value and risk the fact that they may not be brilliant the first time. And as you say, variations are the obvious thing. Like that's the sweet spot, isn't it? If you can do a variation on a successful product and build it out that way, that makes total sense. So zooming back out to the question then of, people not knowing what to work on in their exit strategy or their overall sort of strategy. I know you've mentioned financials quite a lot. Obviously, those matter a great deal. But which financial metrics do you think matter the most? Are we focusing on the wrong things here?
Well, the high-level ones that I focus on and the program focuses on are SDE, which is the seller's discretionary earnings, which is essentially the trailing 12 months net profit plus the add backs. And add backs are costs that a buyer wouldn't necessarily have if they took on your business, so you can add those back in. And the other one is cash flow, which it's a thing which is, I think, quite difficult to get a hold of. But if you've got a proper financial cash flow forecast and you're updating it on a weekly basis and looking ahead, I'm talking about at least a year ahead, with the information you've got in hand, you'll be able to see where your cash lies, and you'll be able to make what I call scenario planning. So you'll be able to say, right, if I release this product with this product, is it better to do that, or is it better to release those 2-3 months apart? And you can see this if you've got a proper cash flow analyzer. So it's SDE and cash flow. So SDE is the value of the business, and cash flow is what allows you to grow the most effectively. Perfect.
That's really, really helpful. And I would say it'd be nice to have a couple of examples of this add backs, which is a word used a lot. And so I guess fundamentally it means you kind of effectively treat it like it's profit, even though it isn't profit, but from the multiple valuation of the business thing, right? So what sort of costs would come under that, for example?
On the add backs.
Yeah.
So there's a multitude of costs, but again, like I said, it's anything that when the buyer takes on your business, they won't necessarily have that cost. So the big one is always the owner's salary. So if you're taking 50 grand out a year, paying yourself 50 grand a year, that'll get added back to the net profit and then times by the multiplier. So that's quite really significant. So it's, let's say, we'll give it 4 times again. So 200 grand gets added back on your business. This is a massive one that many people don't realize this. The business is worth a lot more than they thought. I've talked to a lot of people like this. So that's the big one. Others are things like expenses when you go away and traveling. Not that much is happening these days, but it will again. Office costs, hiring an office, hiring equipment, and I guess they're the key ones that I see.
The one I've heard about is intellectual property, because obviously if you've done trademark or patent work, that's done once, I guess, or at least for a long period, right? Yeah, so that makes sense. But I just want to say, by the way, to anyone who's out there thinking like this guy that I spoke to the other day, he said, I just want to make cash as quickly as possible. Hear us on this. If you, for example, pay yourself $100,000 or let's say $50,000 a year for a few years, and then just stop trading, that's one scenario, right? But if you've got a sellable asset and you paid yourself $50,000 a year for even the last 12 months, that's worth $200,000 if you get a 4 times multiplier, which, as you say, is very, very, very doable these days. It's just like, it's so easy to miss, isn't it? That the massive difference between building an asset to sell versus simply just trading and then stopping. I think it's amazing to people how people are otherwise sophisticated business people just miss this if they've got a certain type of business background, like if they've done service-based businesses, which is basically them, however successful they are. And this guy the other day was an extreme case in point. So what are the main mistakes that people are making with this? I'm guessing the absence of these things, or are there any other sort of big mistakes that people make with their financials that they need to put into their strategic plan?
Definitely the absence of not having, it's just so common, not having a financial forecast, but also not having a proper financial system in place. I even talk to sellers that don't have like their accounts up to date. So when I ask them, what's your SDE, what's in trailing length profit? Oh, I'm not sure. I need to get the finances up to date. That's like the worst case scenario, I guess. But just not having this financial view is just just a real thing that I do see very, very regular, more regular than you'd actually think.
Yeah, and by the way, I know quite a few people who are running probably roughly 7-figure businesses, but they can't tell you exactly what the revenue is, and they can probably tell you the revenue, but they can't tell you the profits. And we get very operations focused very easily if we're not careful. And I think the discipline of hiring a coach or being in a program or even trying to sell your business is again, as we mentioned before, the discipline of an external situation that forces you to make your business better, even if you never sell it. It's got to be safer, right? If you don't know what your profit is, it's like driving with no speedometer in your car. You could be breaking all sorts of rules. Who knows? You might even, for example, as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on the internet, folks, or an accountant, but my understanding, for example, in English law, and it's probably true in many countries, is that you are not legally allowed to pay yourself dividends, and if you don't have the profits to cover them. And if you don't know what your profits are, but you're paying yourself dividends, as some people do, that's a risky thing, right? So. Yeah. So the fourth one that you mentioned of this list of, the 4 big pitfalls you see business owners falling into is not understanding how a business is valued. So I guess the obvious question is, what are the mistakes there, and how is a business valued, or how should we think about that?
I guess we've touched on a lot of these points earlier. It's that basic calculation, this, getting the net 12 months net profit, and add backs, you got your SDE, and then times the multiplier. But that's just the top level. That's easy to understand. Believe it or not, some people don't get to that point, but it's what's underneath there. There's so many factors. There's so many things that make up this multiplier, and there's so many things that you can do if you genuinely focus on SDE in your business over the longer term. It's not a short-term game, as I keep saying. That the sooner you do this stuff, the sooner you think about it and get your mindset in place and drive your actions in the business on a daily basis down this path. Imagine it day by day adds up into a massive improvement at the end.
I guess there's a lot of detail, and I guess it's impossible to put that across in a quick podcast. But and we'll talk in a second about your Elite FBA Exits program, because you're obviously getting some amazing results for people. But it sounds like some of it is the mindset and just driving the SDE as your top priority. And I guess first of all, knowing what it is is a helpful starting point, and then knowing what it should be or what you want it to be, and then working on the difference between the two becomes why we go to work each day, as opposed to just churning the wheels, right? It's just a very how can I put this? There's something about the whole selling on Amazon thing that Amazon gets at you. Your suppliers, you're telling you that the stuff isn't available. The clients, the customers rather, complain about the products, or they want they give you a 1-star review. And we get sucked into a machine, and we just end up working in the machine, don't we? Forget why we got in there in the first place. I often find. So the last thing I want to talk about is that sales process piece then. So we're going to spend too long on that, because I think that the main thing you're driving towards, and the message I'm getting, is like how critical it is to have a plan and then work to a goal. But when it comes to the actual sales process, what are the sort of basic things that people need to know about that? I mean, how do we need to build awareness of the sales process into our overall plan?
Yeah, so there's in the training 12 months, there's a preparation phase. So you prepare for your business, just really prepared for the sale process itself. And that comes back to having an understanding again of the sale process itself. Once you've got that, then you know what you need to do. Comes back to having a number of documents in place and ready just to hand straight over to the buyer. Comes back, obviously, what everyone knows is having the financials in place, having what I call an Amazon ready P&L in place, so the buyer can just pick that P&L up and straight away they can read it very well. Let's get less questioning. And the last one, and this is absolutely critical for you to get the highest value in your business. Again, every business is different. I know I keep talking general terms, and this is because there's so much to this, and each business has got a different case. But each business should, different businesses can get much higher value from going to different types of buyers. So depending on what sort of business you've got, what sort of products you get, what value your business is, depends on what sort of buyer you go to. And again, I see this regular where, I do offer them this advice myself, and I see people going to different buyers and getting £100,000 extra for the business. And going back to that first example, when I said 8 figures, that was because someone came to me and said, look, I've got a quotation here for mid-20s millions. And I said, no, you need to go to a different type of buyer. I sent him somewhere else. He ended up getting mid-30s. So it makes an absolute huge difference to the type of buyer that you go to. So don't just get attracted in to the first buyer that contacts you.
That's really incredible. I mean, by the way, you have so totally done those people's that are lifetimes worth of favors, right? They should be buying you drinks and a place on their yacht for the rest of your life, because that's a 10 million quid difference in their back pocket. That's not just a revenue figure that Amazon gets a piece of and your supplier gets. That's their money, right? That's the actual value they're going to get paid. I mean, that's an extraordinary difference. So that's a very dramatic example of the fact that having a different buyer is just a huge thing. That's amazing. Well, look, obviously you've done some great work for some clients. I mean, talk about result. That's an extraordinary result. So tell us a little bit about the Elite FBA Exits program. If everybody want to explore working with you, tell us a bit about the program, and then we'll tell people where they can go to check you out a bit more.
Yeah, so the program comprises of a 7-module training course, which is all designed around giving you the understandings that we've talked about. So giving the understanding of what the buyer looks at in your business, so you're able to put together a strategic exit plan. So there's a template in there for a master template for a plan, which I've used in my previous career really successfully. And there's also in there a financial modeling tool, which I built myself over the years of running Amazon business, called Amazon Cash Flow, which you can do your financial forecasting, and drive your plan from a financial perspective. Putting all that together, you will have a strategic exit plan, which I can do review people's plan with them on a one-to-one basis. I offer that as part of the program and make sure they've got the most effective plan and they're committed to achieving it. And then we've got, on top of that, of course, there's a Facebook group with all the students in who are on the same journey. And in that group, I get in guest speakers who add in value to everyone's business on a regular basis. And I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy helping people and seeing the results that I've been getting for people. And I'm going to continue doing it. I've still got my own FBA businesses, which I'm building in the background, which I didn't mention, but I just love doing this as a side piece. It's really helping people and giving some value back to the FBA community that I'm so thankful for where I got to.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it sounds like definitely worth exploring. So if people want to explore working with you, I know we've got a couple of things that we can offer. First of all, there's an exit plan checklist, which after today's conversation sounds like it's really worth checking out. So we're going to have a little redirect to that. So just to be clear, if you're listening to the live broadcast or you're watching this on Facebook, we'll pop links in the comments afterwards. But for those who are listening on the podcast, we'll do a little redirect. amazingfba.com/exit plan. That's amazingfba.com/exit plan. Hopefully that's obvious why we called it that. So what is that exit plan checklist consist of? What can people expect?
The thing about this exit plan checklist is when I first put my exit plan checklist together for when I sold my first business, there was about 7 or 8 points on it. I thought, God, there's got to be more to it than this. And I had obviously the obvious ones like financials and, different preparations. And this exit plan checklist is a 55-point checklist. So that's the sort of scale that I'm talking about on things that you need to be having an overview that can have an effect on the value of your business.
Amazing. By the way, you're such an engineer, and I say this this is the best possible thing to say. I come from a family of engineers, by the way. My grandfather and my uncle were mechanical engineers, both. Well, one's died now, sadly, and the other's retired. But yeah, the thing about engineers is they're process driven. And what I love about your work, and being the marketer type focused person I am, we've stayed out of a lot of detail, but I can absolutely attest that Dave's a meticulous man for process and detail. Now, that doesn't make it easy to market things, but I do think that's one of the values you bring, and that's a meticulousness is how you fine tune your business to run like a Swiss watch and be a beautiful thing that's sellable. So yeah, I absolutely know that you're going to add value there. So I'd really suggest anyone listening, whether you're planning to sell your business or not, you think you're planning to sell, go and check out Dave's work, because it is detailed, and detail matters. Just got to say that one. Knowing you a bit, Dave, as we know each other quite well now. So the second thing is obviously, I know you offer a call for people. Tell people about, what is it you can discuss on the call like that?
Yeah, so if you're interested in perhaps knowing more about the program, coming on the program, just book a call with me, and we'll have a chat about your business, and I'll see if I can help you to maximize the value of your business. And it's not for everyone. This, by the way, I don't work with everyone. Not some people aren't suitable for it, but many businesses are, and I'm pretty confident that I can help. And but that's why I like to set the call up, just to get to know people.
Absolutely. Now, always worth a discussion. I just beg my clients who are even got vaguely sellable, and actually a lot of my clients have very sellable businesses, but they're not necessarily there yet. And I beg them to go and have conversations with every business broker or every business buyer who they can, to educate themselves. I say, like, don't sign anything yet necessarily unless you're comfortable, but go have the conversation, and then you're another person to add to that armory to educate yourself, as hopefully this podcast has been part of it as well. And just the mechanics of it, folks, again, if you're listening on the podcast, just go to amazingfba.com/exit plan, and then if you are listening on the live right now, I'll just pop Dave's email into the comments, which he's kindly agreed to put out there. So please be respectful, guys. Don't get in touch with random newbie questions. If you actually own a serious business, please get in touch. So I think that's about all I've got really to ask you, Dave, because otherwise we could bury ourselves in detail, but that's kind of a point in the end why you run a course, because we can't cover all the details in one podcast. So my last question to you is what questions should I have asked you that we haven't covered?
I just want to pick up on something you've mentioned towards the end. You said that people you direct people to brokers and business buyers, speak to as many as possible. Now think of it like this: those brokers and buyers want to buy your business off you as quickly as possible. Okay, so they're not going to be giving you the long-term strategic focus actions that can really drive the value in the business. They're not going to say to you, "Oh yes, John, go and do this and come back in a year's time and your business will be worth this much more." The likelihood is that you won't go back to them and they'll lose the sales. So that's where I come from, in a completely different perspective, being Amazon seller myself and knowing what all these things are. And that's why it's different.
Yeah, beautifully put. I think you've articulated your unique value, really, and it is pretty unique. I know that there's tons of aggregators out there, and they're definitely worth a conversation with, but as you say, with awareness, they are going to try and sell you pretty hard.
They're not going to say, "Oh, I think you've missed this, I'd back off, you should do this first."
Yes. No, of course not. No. So I wouldn't suggest you go and, how do they say, if you sup with the devil, you should use a long spoon, as my mum used to say. So, I mean, that's a bit harsh. I don't think the aggregators are devils. They just, as you said, quite absolutely accurately, their objective is to make a quick purchase if your business looks like an attractive proposition and at the lowest multiple possible. So when I say talk to them, I'm not saying assume they're your friend. I'm not saying assume they're an enemy either, but they're just a person to educate yourself. But as I said, and to be fair, I say go talk to them. Don't sign anything. To be fair, I do say that thing, but you're absolutely right. They aren't going to think about the longer term, and you're bang on with that. Actually, that's a very good observation. That really, in the end, what you offer is something rather much more, rather more long term. And are much more geared to the needs of the sellers, because you don't have a dog in the fight, as it were. You're not trying to persuade them to sell their business next year or next month or whatever. So yeah, good point. Very, very good point. And for that reason alone, I think that you're a very valuable person to listen to. You're offering something fairly unique in the marketplace, actually, and that is very valuable. So that's why I thought it was important to have you back on the show. Great. Any other last minute bits of wisdom you would wish to share with the audience?
Yeah, the comment that we've made, start with the end in mind. Okay, if you're not thinking about your exit plan and you're planning to sell your business one day and you haven't got an exit plan in place, then why not? You should have one. You should be thinking about what you need to do to get maximum value, because if you're not, going back to what we said, either you won't sell or the value when you do sell won't be as much. So get your exit plan in place now.
Excellent. Fine wisdom on which to leave it. Just remains for me to say, Dave, many thanks for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom about exit strategy and exits generally for Amazon businesses.
Thank you.
Excellent, folks. So that's the end of the formal podcast. I can't see any major questions that have come up from listeners on the live. So just to say thanks very much for listening live. If you're watching the live version of the video, then just if you want to get this exit plan checklist, I think the easiest thing is probably going to be if we just email Dave, and I'll pop the email in the comments. In fact, I'll do that now. Yeah. And then also, I know that what we should have said on the podcast probably, but we could certainly say if they want to join the Facebook group, I'll just pop that in the comments now. So tell us a little bit more about the Facebook group, Dave. We haven't really talked about that, but we mentioned it briefly. We've got about 800 people in there, but what can people get from joining that group? Yeah,
so the Facebook group's called Amazon FBA Exit Plan. It's got about 820 people in at the moment. So that group, I like to just put lots of content into there just to make people realize some of the things that we've been talking about today, how important this exit plan is. And I do get guest speakers in to talk about various subjects around selling your business, like lawyer and business brokers have been in there, and accountants. There's some really good sessions, learning some really key things that can maximize the value of the business. So, and just to be clear, is that a free group as well? Yeah, amazing. Group, yeah. So yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like something I would definitely advise everybody to join, because I should probably mention that on the podcast actually, but I guess we had enough calls to action now. It might confuse people, but that's great. That's really sounds like worth checking out, and I'm not even sure if I've joined your group. If I haven't, I'm definitely going to join, because that sounds like a very intelligent set of conversations. Nice to get away also from the groups which are full of people asking dumb questions as well. There are a lot of those, right? Yeah. I'm just looking at the email you've put there. It says it's Dave_Storey at afbts.com. Let me let me correct that. So yeah, sorry. Let me correct that, and I'll correct that on. So the email, so it's Dave. Yeah, _story. Sorry, folks. Live mistakes here at afbts.com. Okay. Yeah, right. Sorry, folks. That will actually get through to Dave as opposed. I don't know what I made up the other one. Anyway, so that's it for our live today, folks. Thanks so much for listening with us. Do put any comments below. Dave and I will definitely be reading them, and we'll respond if any questions that you put or anything else. But thank you very much, Dave, for coming to the live. I'm sorry it's a bit weird to do a live, and then within that a podcast. It's like a show within a show. But thanks very much for coming on the Facebook Live, Dave. That's been fantastic.